Welcome to Cayman Conversations. Today is Sunday, May 5th, and I'm Ralph Lewis. In our first interview, I spoke with the Honorable Sabrina Turner and newly appointed Chief Nursing Officer Felicia McLean to learn about the National Health Strategy and Plan. In our second interview, I received a history lesson from Dr. J.A. Roy Budden on emancipation in the Cayman Islands. Now let's get started with the National Health Strategy. Welcome back to Cayman Conversations, and today it's my pleasure to introduce to you Minister Sabrina Turner and her guest, Felicia McLean. Good day, Sabrina. How are you doing today?
Good day. It is a pleasure to be here. I am fine, thank you, and eager to definitely get it out here and continue to promote what we got in store here for health, the Ministry of Health and Wellness, with my very abled and newest and first Cayman Islands Chief Nursing Officer to be placed in the Ministry of Health and Wellness at a national level. Thank you for having us.
Okay. Can you tell me about Felicia? I didn't hear about her until that meeting that you had and introduced the new Chief Nursing Officer. Just introduce her briefly for me, please.
Ms. Felicia McLean is Chief Nursing Officer, who recently has been promoted, well, not promoted, she has just entered that post as a new role within the Ministry of Health and Wellness. Upon getting into office, that was one of my key drivers and initiatives in having nurses being represented at a national level. For those of you who are aware, Chief Nursing Officer's title position was sitting in Health Services Authority, and that was more statutory authority. I felt the need that it was better placed and could give it a lot more mileage, having that post in that position here at a national level, just like how you have the Chief Medical Officer. Why not have nurses represented at a national level as well? And I want to publicly congratulate her. She applied, she was successful, and I can't wait to see what Felicia has in store.
Thank you very much. And Felicia, welcome. And any comments?
Yeah, I'm just hugely honored to be able to take the task of being the Chief Nursing Officer in the Cayman Islands in the Ministry of Health and Wellness. I want to say a big thank you to the minister, the government, the ministry for seeing a need for nursing to be represented at a national level and to help support the CMO as we set the guidelines and provide the expertise to really ensure the health and the wellness of our country is met.
Okay, thank you very much. The reason for us being here is to talk about the National Health Strategy. I know some time before, Minister, that you spoke about changing the Ministry to Health and Wellness, and talk to us about the new health strategy and what's happening with it.
Well, we're pretty much just hitting the pavement running, meeting and being on all social media platforms, going on a number of radio stations before we actually start the public engagement. And we just wanted people to know the importance of this National Health Strategy and Plan that will be covering us for the next 10 years. So this National Health Strategy and Plan will cover the Cayman Islands, setting the tone, setting the pace of what healthcare is and health for this country for the next 10 years. And we want to make sure that there's a cross section or cover as much persons, getting as much persons around the table as we plan this new strategic direction where healthcare is concerned for the Cayman Islands based on data. Everyone will know that from the time I've taken office that I was not one to just jump at making policies, looking at revisions of laws without being data driven. And that's not just data from regional or looking at where else in the world we can get information from, even though the topics may be identical. What is critical is where that data is gotten from in order for us to make policies, amend our laws to know where we as a jurisdiction is going. And I felt it was imperative that we knew exactly what was happening on the ground in the Cayman Islands. And that is why we have engaged Pan American Health Organization to help support this development of this health strategy and plan for the Cayman Islands. Bearing in mind, we have been members of PAHO since 2001, and it doesn't cost this country any money. It's not an additional cost to us in being able to retain these skill sets that they will be providing for us. And then another good thing with this, the last national health strategy and plan was done back in 2012. That was done for 5 years. So there's been a 7-year gap from 2017 to now. And the previous plan of 2012 to 2017 did not include an operational plan. The one that we're putting in place that will set the tone for the next 10 years will include an operational plan. So the whole outcome of this is keenly driven on the data that we get. And that's why we're inviting and engaging with key stakeholders, such as government ministries, various government departments, nonprofit organizations, the churches, healthcare practitioners, both private and public, and also health insurance companies as well. And just the regular layperson, but I'm quite sure the operational arm of rolling this out, the chief nursing officer will be more than able to tell you how the communication plan will go, what that outreach will mean. I'm just here to set the tone as to how important it is for us. We're looking at, once this data is collected, that I'll be able to take it to my cabinet colleagues by the end of fourth quarter of this year, so that we will know where we're going and get my colleagues' support on this initiative.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Felicia, we're going to put you on the limelight right now. Explain to us your role in the strategy and the consultation, and can I participate as an individual or media?
Great question. So for sure, you can participate in both as a participant, as a media, or as an individual, however you choose. But it is key to have everyone, as much as possible in the Cayman Islands, have their voice heard through this process. And there'll be several ways that they can get involved. So there are key stakeholder groups that are happening within core ministries, because we want to hear what agriculture has to say in regards to food sustainability. We want to hear what environment has to say about air quality. All those things tie into overall health and wellness. We want to hear from people in the community, in the districts, how easy is it for them to access healthcare? Are their needs being met? Can they afford it? Can they get there? And when they get there, what's their patient experience like? We're also looking at, like, as Minister mentioned, the healthcare providers. So from their standpoint, how easy is it for them to do their job? Do they have the equipment needed? Do they need more things to ensure that they are meeting the need of the population? So everyone and anyone across sectors, we're looking at our faith-based organization groups, because they have a great network in that regards to get this tool out there, which will be a survey that they can complete online. But for those who aren't into surveys, there'll be a WhatsApp group that they can just message in, hey, I've been trying to get healthcare and I have this problem and I can't access it, or I was able to access it but I need another level. So whatever it is, there'll be ways to just provide general feedback. The survey just has 10 questions. We're also going to have town hall meetings where people can come out to those. We're also going to go to the BRAC and looking at the sister island as well, trying to figure out from over there as well, how is their access to care? Do they have what they need to meet the needs? Because the health and wellness of the population is at the highest priority for the Ministry of Health and Wellness to ensure we're meeting it. And this strategy is going to inform how we go forward for the next 10 years, meeting the need. Do we need these services? Do we have all the services we need? We've grown so much in the last, 10, 20 years. And now we need to ensure that our healthcare meets that need.
Okay, thank you very much. This is very interesting. And do you anticipate that you'll get some good feedback from what you're hearing?
We actually are. So we've been on the radio since last week, and we've already gotten feedback. So people have already started emailing in some of their thoughts. Also from the talk shows, whatever they tell us is being informed into this document, and everything's going to add up. So even if I was to write, this happened to my child and this was what I needed, but I didn't get it. Guess what? If I put that in and then Minister Turner was to put something like that in and you were, that's going to populate on this survey when we're pulling these results to say, hey, maybe childcare needs need a bit more attention. Maybe mental health needs more attention. Maybe insurance needs more attention. So every word and everything counts. And we're going to do our very best to get to everyone that we can. We even networking with the Department of Children and Family Services and their community reps to be able to go to their older persons gatherings so that we can collect the data on the ground, because not everyone is very tech savvy. So we're looking at all of those and doing our best to get as much information as possible from our people.
Which is why, if I may, it's very important for us to engage, because based on these engagements, it may come across as more critique, but then you look beyond the criticism and see, well, let's take out of that something that we're forging and we're trying to create this overarching document. And it's based on the data, the information, which is coming out of those engagements that may present something that was not even envisioned. Yes. So it is very important for us to engage with everyone, and so that we can get the information in order to help us do this overarching guiding document for the Cayman Islands that will define for the next 10 years, the direction with regards to health and healthcare here and the system. And people don't understand. You may think, oh, well, what I have to contribute may not mean anything, but the mere fact that we are setting the tone and collecting data to create this document that for the next 10 years, those who we're engaging with now, let's say you're 25, you're going to be 35. Let's say if you're 35, you're going to be 45. If you're 65, you're going to be 75. So why would you feel? I don't want anyone to feel that their voice is valued any less. Don't do that. Everyone is important. And this is why the engaging and inviting persons around that table is so vast. And Miss Felicia has alluded, and I went into that earlier, but that's why it's important. I don't want anybody to feel any less. This is our document. In one of the other interviews, Miss Felicia, remember, I tried to break it down or to give you an idea. It's almost like the constitution of health and healthcare for the Cayman Islands that we're actually collecting information on in order to cover us, including an operational plan for the next 10 years. And that's why your voice matters.
Yes. And Minister, I must say, I appreciate and applaud your government for the strategy in all these projects that you are doing, because you're getting information from the people. And that's so key. You're not putting things out there that you think of or get a consultant to say or guide you. You're asking for feedback from the population. This is not something.
And we want it Caymanian. It's all Caymanian information because this is our document. Why should we cut and paste from some other country that has no relevance, maybe same topic, but a different context, a different temperature, different environment, different culture? Let's make this document ours. And that is why we want people to participate.
And I encourage our listeners and readers, please get involved. I know it's not a habit that we just stay aside and let everything happen, but now the approach is to try and include everyone, and everyone has a voice. And like Switzer mentioned, the people has something to say. And if we encourage them, like we're doing today, then they'll come with their voice because they have a lot to say.
Correct.
But that's definitely, very interesting. And, I look forward, to see the results at some point. How long is the consultation?
So the consultation is going to last for the whole month of May. So May 1st to May 31st. But as I mentioned earlier, we've already started getting feedback. Some people have gone to our website, www.gov.ky/health-wellness, and they've been starting to, hit that email link so they can email things in. However, May 1st is when the official period starts, which is when our WhatsApp will be live. For those who like WhatsApp, they'll be able to send a message in there, just a comment, 936-4969, or after that, or during that time, they can also email mohfeedback@gov.ky. That's the email address, and we're going to gather all the feedback from there. All of this information be collected and stored or given over to PAHO, who are, as the minister mentioned, they're running the show here. So it is confidential. There are some things in there that help us to figure out, where you're from, and like, are you in the Cayman Islands, Cayman Brac, Little Cayman, where you are, how old are you, just because we want to see the demographics of, are you a working age? Are you a child? Are you, childbearing years? So it's not trying to identify people in sense of any data that's going to, be able to really identify me, but it's a general idea so we can have we can know who's informing this document in that regard. So we really encourage people to do that, trusting that that information is then going to be collected and then used to, as Minister said, create that national action plan that where we're going to go for the next 10 years.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Minister Turner, I'm going to ask a question here. Maybe you may want to answer it, but I'm getting older, but I'm feeling young. And how important is my wellness and health to me as I grow older? And is that incorporated into your strategy?
Of course, and that's why the demographics as the chief nursing officer is actually one that we want to cover. We have to make sure that this document takes care of the cradle, and we all got to go here to the grave. And as you will notice, we have covered all faith-based organizations. We were inviting them around the table, nonprofits, the insurance companies, both are private and are public, and all of the healthcare practitioners, boards and committees, commissions and councils. So you got the older person councils, not that I'm timelining you, but you see where I'm going here? We all have to get there. These are the key stakeholders that we are going to be engaging. So we want the public, when those links are out there, to actually call into the various shows, engage with you, call our ministry, and we will definitely make sure everything is taken into consideration. Now remember, this health strategy is all about moving forward on Caymanian-based information, data. And it does not only belong in the Ministry of Health and Wellness. Our Chief Nursing Officer said, we're talking about my colleague, Minister J.E. Banks from Agriculture, talking about food sustainability. Nutrition is in there. We're talking about youth and sports, wellness, exercise, getting moving. How can we be more inclusive with including even our retirees, our seniors within our community? That all ties in. And then the young ones, what positive, nutritious seeds are we planting in them? How can that be seen in this document? And that is why it's important that one of the deliverables, or a few of the deliverables in this document, once all of the information has been collated and formalized into a document, a part of it is strategic planning. What does that mean, one may say? It is pretty much transforming priorities into plans. And then you got the operational arm. What is that based on the information? Transforming plans into actions. There's no sense of going through all of this work if we don't have policies and the drivers behind bringing it into a reality. And big one here, Mr. Lewis, accountability. We got to make sure that the legislation's aligned with this document, so that our civil servants can carry out their duties with no hindrance that it's not in legislation. So you understand how broad it is, how 360 this is, in order for it to meet the needs, not only as a jurisdiction, but the needs of our people, who will be our biggest asset in all of this.
Yes, Felicia, anything like to add to that, Cayman?
No, just I can't agree with it more. Like, for me, when I think of going back to my Jasmine days, I mentioned earlier, holistic care is what it's about, patient-centered holistic care. But guess what? The patient is at the center. And so every one of us will be a patient at some point in time in our lives, or have been already, because, like, as Minister said, it's goes from birth and then onwards. And if we're not the patient, it'll be our loved ones, our next of kin that'll be there, that will encounter it, or that, life and health and wellness is affected by not being able to get the healthy foods, not being able to get the right medications, not be able to have enough coverage for mental health, whatever it may be. Somewhere in there, we're all touched in different ways. And that's why we are coming to the population and saying, please, 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 take the moments to fill out the survey, take the time to email in or WhatsApp in, whichever way is easiest for you. Or, we'll come find you. Let us know. We'll come find you and hear what you have to say, because we really want this to be a data-based project. By getting the information in, what are our needs? Where do we want to go from there? What do we see? Even healthcare workers, do I have enough to do the job that I need to do? Everything is going to inform this document, and then a plan can be put in place so that we have a guideline of the bare minimum that we need to go forward for the next 10 years.
That's setting that national health policies, because I don't think people realize as a jurisdiction, absent of policies from a national level, it leaves too much room for ambiguity. And people come in possibly with their own mindset, and then it gets into legal, what is right, and then you go back to legislation, and then you're like, oh, well, that's absent, but oh, this is what we intended, oh, this is what we mean. And it's the best, the loudest voice sometimes is the one that wins, not necessarily that it's right. Now, we are creating a national document for health and healthcare in the Cayman Islands that sets it clear of what the standards are for our jurisdiction. And if that isn't key, and when you're looking at the driving force of how we're going around collecting this information, making sure that it is local Caymanian information, our country must be proud for what is in store for us for the next 10 years.
Yes. And Minister, if I may add, your Ministry of Health, if not the most important ministry in the island or in the government, is one of the most. Because yes, we look at finances and the economy. If you can't work, or if you're sick,
Correct.
you can't work.
Correct.
If you can't work, you can't earn a living. You can't generate cash. You can't have a business. So this is why...
It's your quality of life as well. That is why public health is also very dear to me and my ministry. The quality of life, I think people just look at the bigger, the end stage then. I stand to be corrected. But we want to turn this country into a healthier nation. We want to be able to know that everyone has access to quality healthcare. And we want to make sure that we getting to a point where it's preventative and not seeing persons at the end stage, which is too often right now. And we gotta switch that pendulum to create more of a balance, but tipping on the right side where we're catching you earlier in.
Yes,
and when we take care of our health from the beginning, then we don't have the stress. You know what I mean? When we're a healthier population, we won't be able to actually be vibrant and participate in our community and do the best we can and actually make a difference for decades to come.
Correct.
So what will we say to people who say, oh, it's too late to do this? We all already have habits, and will this work? What will you say to those people?
Sorry, you broke in and I didn't hear that one.
No, I got his question. It's never too late to start. It is never, and that's where we're making the mistake. I mean, if it was a case where we looked at generations of, let's say you're one who says, you have gout. I'm going to go to some of my people that I know have gout. And you're like, I can't give up that beef. I can't. Okay, but you tailor it back a little bit. And when you only have it, let's say, during Christmas. For example, it is never too late to make a first start, a new chapter, making new resolutions for yourself and sticking to it. That's the key. What we are doing, we're setting something for the next 10 years, including everyone, or as much as possible we can, in the Cayman Islands to take the next step forward. And this is why my chief nursing officer says, even the young ones will have to access healthcare. We may be taking those young people to see their pediatrician now, but there will be a point in time when they will be taking their parents or their own children or their significant other into health services or to getting healthcare. So whether or not it's too late, no, I don't live my life like that.
Okay, well, Felicia,
today and looking forward is interesting.
Yes, very well. Felicia, do you have any final words? I will start to wrap up, and let us know where we can send our information again, please.
So final words for me is please, take the time. I know this is like one in the 10 or 11 surveys you might have heard recently. However, the survey is just 10 questions. And then at the bottom, you can also just ad-lib any other comments, suggestions you might have. But please take the time to do it. It's going to really inform this document. If you're not really the survey person that's going to come out shortly, you can WhatsApp, as I mentioned earlier, 936-4967. That'll be live on Wednesday, May the 1st for the whole month of May. I'll say that number again, 936-4969, or they can email in at mohfeedback@gov.ky, and we look forward to hearing from as many people as possible, because we want this to really set the tone for the next 10 years.
Thank you. And Minister Turner, any final words?
Final words would be very concise. Thank you very much for having us. Thank you for entertaining us and being a vehicle to get the word out, and being able to just explain to the Caymanian public the importance of this national health strategy and plan. We don't want persons to get it mixed up that this is another step survey that you're going to be asked to take blood or anything like that. No, this is totally separate. That's just another element of the step survey that's going to tie in to this national health strategy and plan. It's two different exercises, but I'm very, very optimistic, and I know that I have a competent Ministry of Health and Wellness team who will bring this as well over the finish line as successfully as we were with the step survey. But kudos to you. Thank you for entertaining us. We greatly appreciate it.
And thank you for being here on Cayman Conversations. Until next time, have a great day. We thank the Honorable Sabrina Turner and Felicia McLean for their invaluable contribution and encourage you to participate in this important survey. It's now time to talk about emancipation.
We're losing our culture, and we need to go back to the old days.
We don't stand tall anymore. We don't know who we are. We are already a minority, a numerical minority in Cayman.
We're too easily outnumbered. We didn't have large families, and so that's why we're at a disadvantage now. We don't have a national identity, and we're struggling to develop a national identity.
And that's why it is important for Caymanians to know where they're coming from.
When I ask Caymanian children, they don't know 1/10 of the things that I know about my heritage.
If we don't address where we're coming from, we're going to think that we're somebody else. And we're going to allow other people to come here and, as the Rastafarians would say, down-press our culture.
It's my pleasure to invite you and to welcome you again, Mr. Roy Bodden. It's been a while, but thanks for coming on today.
Thanks for having me, Ralph. I look forward to today's session.
Very good. Well, the whole talk this weekend is about emancipation, and I couldn't think of no other than a scholar such as yourself, who knows history very well, to talk to us about Cayman and emancipation. Many of our residents may not be aware that there was emancipation. And so can you just introduce yourself briefly, just a background, and let's start the conversation on emancipation.
Yeah, my name is, Roy Bodden, and I'm a cultural historian, is what most people describe me as. That is one of the many caps I wear. And I'm very enthused, very interested, and I know a little bit about the history of these islands. And I'm particularly interested in that aspect of our history, which has to do with slavery and progress of the Black people in Caymanian society.
Why do you think that not many of us believe that there was slavery in the Cayman Islands?
Well, because we are not very familiar with the history. People are only now becoming interested in Caymanian history. We don't have a lot of written material on the history of these islands, nor were we a people who were interested for various reasons. But that happily is changing now. So people are researching, they're questioning, they're reading, and they're trying to find out generally where we came from, what our background was, which is very good.
Yes, and what is a topic that I really, like, and as Miss Lucille said recently, if we don't know where we came from, we can't move forward, and it's so
Yeah,
important.
that is true, but a lot of people in Caymanian society are slavery deniers. They deny that slavery existed for whatever reason. Many people feel ashamed. Some people get angry because their family or families may be implicated as former slaveholders. And so,
Okay.
for various reasons, people tend to deny it. But there's absolutely nothing wrong with investigating into slavery because slavery was here. Indeed, Bordentown was the slave capital of Grand Cayman. There was, to the best of my knowledge, little to no slavery existed on Cayman Brac and Little Cayman. Grand Cayman was the focal point of slavery in these islands.
Yes. And in talking with a friend of mine, he emphasized that it's our history. There's no running away from it. It happened, and we cannot erase it. But we need to be aware of it and pass on the information to our young people and others at our age who may not know. And uh, can you just comment on that, please? How important it is that we embrace our history.
Well, if we don't know where we came from, how can we know where we're going? So it's very important for us to know our history because we should know as a people who we really are. If we don't know who we are, then we will have to take what other people tell us as to who we are. But if we know our history, we know where we came from and we know who we are. That's very important,
Yeah.
especially as I think we are evolving as a nation, a young nation state. We are becoming a country. So it's very important to know where we came from,
Okay.
what our
So,
ashes were, so to speak.
yes. So take us back in time. When did this slavery happen, and where did the slaves come from?
Well, as far as my research goes, Grand Cayman didn't have plantation slavery because we had limited land mass, and so we couldn't farm sugarcane economically, nor could we plant tobacco economically. Although there was a time in the history of Grand Cayman when we grew what is called Sea Island cotton. And it did very well on a limited scale until, of course, the United States cotton plantations dominated the market. And because we were not an economy of scale, cotton fell out of vogue here. The slavery, therefore, in Cayman was mainly domestic slavery. The slaves worked for the white or near white masters, as I called it. And it is important also to note that even the white masters weren't that phenomenally wealthy in comparison to the slaveholders, for example, in Jamaica, in Barbados, and the other slave economies. There were no great houses here. there were no estates, so that the masters were only, I say, Ralph, that slavery here was more based along color lines than it was wealth, as it was in Jamaica and Barbados and these places where the masters were not only white, they were also wealthy in comparison to the slaves. Here, the masters were white, but they were not all that wealthy.
Okay. And when we talk about wealth, right now there's a big conversation about reparations because some of the slave owners in the past, their estates accumulated a lot of wealth from the plantations that were found by the slaves. And now they said, okay, well, these families have benefited from slavery. Now it's over. Well, there should be some reparations, some payments. But if our slave masters were not really wealthy, do you think there's a conversation to be had about reparations in the Cayman Islands?
No, no, absolutely not. Absolutely not. I don't think the Cayman is a society where the whole business of reparations from our masters comes in. I'll tell you an interesting historical incident. In 1817, when the British had what is called the Slave Registration Act, which was a census carried out in the British Caribbean in preparation, because the British knew that there had to be an eventual emancipation of the slaves. So the first thing happened in 1807 was the British abolished the trade in slaves. That meant that it was against British law to transport any slave, any black African as a slave in a British ship. Okay? And Britain patrolled, the Royal Navy was dominant, and they patrolled the seas to prevent that. So the first thing towards this whole emancipation in 1807, you had the abolition of slavery. You couldn't bring any more slaves from Africa, but slavery still continued in the colonies. It just meant that you couldn't add new numbers of black people coming from Africa.
Right.
10 years after that, 1817, the British government commissioned what they called the Slave Registration Act, which was a census of all the slaves on the sugar plantations in the British Caribbean. Well, the Caymanian slave owners never participated in that Slave Registration Act. There are two reasons given for that. One reason is that the Jamaican slave owners, and we fell under Jamaica then, hid the information from the Caymanian owners and never told them that there was a census, because the Jamaican owners realized that it would have something to do with compensation. And they figured if they included Cayman, it would be less money for them. So they did not include Cayman. The other version is that the Caymanian slave owners knew, but they wouldn't participate because they had no intention of giving up their slaves.
Right.
Okay?
That's
So
very...
it went on then. The next important event in the calendar of enslavement was in 1834, when the British Parliament voted for the emancipation of slaves. Emancipation,
Yes.
different from abolition. Emancipation, that they said all slaves must be free as of this day, 1834. But in order to allow the slave masters to make an adjustment for the labor they were losing, the British government says, well, the slaves are free, but they have to work 4 years as apprentices, which will give the slave masters time to replace them as laborers.
Yes.
In the Cayman Islands, that information was withheld again from Caymanians, and the slaves continued to work until 1835, when it was made known Cayman. And because of that, the slaves in Cayman were granted absolute freedom. So in 1835, the slaves were absolutely free in Cayman, no apprenticeship, while in the other British Caribbean territories,
Yes.
they had to work for almost 4 more years apprenticeship. So much
Yes.
so that the Marquis of Sligo, when he came to Cayman to read with the Emancipation Proclamation in 1835, he was so concerned that when he declared Caymanian slaves absolutely free, the Jamaican slave owners and the Jamaican slave would be restive and have a revolt, hearing that they still had to work for 4 years while the slaves in Cayman. So he didn't spend any long time in Cayman. He basically, and he didn't read the proclamation himself. His aide-de-camp or military man, Captain Pack, read the Emancipation Proclamation.
Yes.
What Governor Sligo did was to give an address in which he spoke to the slave owners and to the slaves and told them each what his responsibility, what their responsibility was. So that is a significant difference from what transpired in the other British Caribbean territories. And I don't know how much our authorities here emphasize that, but in 1835, and again, here's another significant difference. In the British Caribbean, the absolute emancipation took place on August the 6th. Our slaves were emancipated on May the 3rd, 1835, while the other British Caribbean territories celebrate August the 1st, 1834. We in the Cayman Islands celebrate May the 3rd, 1835, because that's when we were our slaves were manumitted.
And that's why we have emancipation celebrations on May the 3rd.
Right. While in the other formerly British Caribbean, they
Yes.
celebrate the 1st of August.
Yes. And I'm from Montserrat, and I remember there's a holiday the 1st of August
Yes.
every year.
We used to celebrate the 1st of August here as Emancipation Day. But we didn't know any better at that time. Further research has now differentiated that our emancipation in the Cayman Islands never took place until May the 3rd, 1835, because the Emancipation Day holiday was replaced by Discovery Day. So we stopped celebrating Emancipation Day some decades ago. But when I was growing up in Bordentown, it was a big time. It was the Black people had a big celebration ending with a soiree in the Bordentown Town Hall. And the Black people came from all over the island to Bordentown to celebrate because, as I say, Bordentown was the slave capital.
Yeah. Well, there is a week of festivities planned or celebration planned next week, and this show will be aired on Sunday. But I wonder what the turnout will be. I know that the government is doing, and the minister is doing his, utmost to try and get people to come out, wear certain clothes with certain emblems on them, to try and embrace it. As a Caymanian living here, I know in the culture, do you believe we'll have a good support for that event?
Well, Ralph, I would hope that it is well supported, but I remain to be convinced because, as I've said, I know this very well because I have bear the brunt of societal criticism. Whenever you try to elevate Black people and Black achievements in this society, you are likely to get labeled. This is not new to me. From the time I went to college and realized the significance that Black people played, not only in the Caribbean, but in the world. I developed a Black consciousness before I left home, as I tell the story, because my mother was of the Caymanian diaspora.
Yes.
And she born and spent her formative years in Cuba. And my mother told me before I left home about the Universal Negro Improvement Association and the work of Marcus Garvey to elevate Black people. So I grew with that consciousness from as a toddler. But when I tried to express it publicly, people labeled me all kind of Black power advocate and all that. So now I sit back and laugh because they're only trying to catch up with me. They're only trying to catch up to the level I have been all these years, and I've left them behind. I'm way past that now. But I am happy to see that there is a consciousness and that we are celebrating this because it is something to be celebrated. And slavery is nothing to be ashamed of. It's nothing to be ashamed of. It was a disgraceful occurrence, but we cannot erase history. Nor am I one of those who believe that we should be seeking revenge against the white masters. That is why I am lukewarm about this whole reparations debate. Because where are we going to get the money from? How much money are we going to get? What are we going to do with it when we get it?
Yes.
So as far as I'm concerned, it is best for us to try to move on and find out now how we can be interdependent and cooperate to make the world a better place. So I'm not one of those people who talk about, well, the white people got to pay us.
No. And I totally agree with your point in that. I think, we live in a multicultural society, in a multicultural world with social media and internet. We are in a global village, not just an island with water around it, but I could be here in the Cayman Islands talking to someone in Australia, and you wouldn't even know. They could they become the native Australians. They could be from the different colors, different backgrounds. I was telling someone the other day, my mother, grandfather was white. My mother is white, but I'm a dark skin, and my great grandfather is Irish. He's an Irish dean.
Rich, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I get emotional about this because it's the same thing that occurs in Caymanian society. The slavery here was a domestic slavery. And everyone, any historian of slavery knows slavery was a violent institution. And so what happened? There was a lot of rape, sexual assault, and all that kind of thing going on because, first of all, the white people never recognized the slave marriages. And what happened? All the beautiful and attractive Black women, they were at the mercy of the white masters, or the white overseers in their drunken debauchery. That's what they did. They violated them. They violated them and they humiliated them, some before their husbands. It's a fact of life. That is what I say, Ralph. And here's the controversy, and probably why I'm not so well liked in Cayman. I say, among Caymanians, whom I call established Caymanians, there is no absolute racial purity. We're all mixed. The Black are mixed with white, and the white are mixed with Black. Because if you have one drop of Black blood in you, you're not considered white. And if you have one drop of white blood in you, you can't be considered Black. And let me give you a bit of the history refined. The Europeans called people like us Creole, which means we were not of Europe. We were born in the colonies. And any white person who was born in the colony of white parentage who lived there for any time was not considered white by European standards. And among those of us who are predominantly Black, the Black Africans don't consider us Black because they say we are mixed. And it's an insult to them to tell them that you're a Black African because they're quick to point out, no, you're not. You've been living in the Caribbean for generations among all these people. So how can you say you're Black? You're not Black. We are Black, not you.
Yes. And it's a great conversation that I think, we need to embrace and have and get different views, because if we lock ourselves in closets, we are doing ourselves an injustice. And just as we're talking about history, if we're not open up or not opened to hearing the facts of where we came from, we are doing ourselves, we are chopping ourselves short. And
Exactly.
it's amazing. And as a historian, I'm sure you'll embrace this, but knowledge is power. And when you know something of fact, you are elevated to a different level and you can have a conversation based on facts and history. And so
But you,
therefore, Mr. Roy, I will listen to you for hours and hours. Please continue.
but you will understand that many people are uncomfortable with that because they have already established for themselves an identity without properly researching that identity. And they are fearful of researching that identity, and they take opposition, they take umbrage to someone who tried to tell them, well, your identity is not correct. It cannot be correct because all the slavery in Cayman was domestic slavery. And we knew what went on in slavery. And you're telling me you worked in the house of the white master. Men are men, and particularly where there was a lot of rum involved. So what the Portuguese talked about, miscegenation, there was a lot of miscegenation. And if you want to go, if you want to have a historical example, check Brazil, which was with Portuguese. You know, the Portuguese had one of the most liberal attitudes towards race. That is why if you go to Brazil, you will see people of all shades and hue, because the Portuguese, especially among the European slave-holding nations, they had the less qualms about mixing with the native peoples. And another thing, all slavery was at the big racial based, and the people. So these people said, they didn't think it any great travesty to take advantage of the black people, and so a lot of that happened, and Cayman was no different, even although it was on a much smaller scale.
And I believe that times are changing. And one of the reasons why I believe that is because, of course, the domestic helpers, those people that look after our children, the majority are from other countries, the majority are different colors. The domestics, well, like you said, they're not slaves, but they're people who have of a different background and probably at the lower income levels. And so our children are being raised by those people. And when I started having a family, my help was from Jamaica. And she started
Yeah,
teaching my daughters things. And so what we're seeing with our children are now being integrated into society as a mixed culture and a mixed colors. And I think this is going to go away at some point.
well, let me put it to you this way. Cayman is an anomaly. Cayman is an anomaly in this sense. Cayman is, and this was brought home to me some years ago when a friend of mine, Gilbert, and I, Professor Nettleford was in Cayman on a visit, and Gilbert and I took him to a restaurant in Cayman. And Professor Nettleford said, you live in a society which is unique in the Caribbean because this is the only society where black people at these kind of restaurants are waited upon by white Europeans. And when you come to think of it, that is the case. Cayman is the only place in the Caribbean where you go to a fancy restaurant and you're waited upon. The waiters and the maitre d' and all these people
Yes.
are Caucasians, white Caucasians from
Yes.
Europe or from the metropolitan countries. And so in our development, that is likely to happen. And we don't make much of that, but because of course it's just routine. But yeah, I am happy that people are now becoming more conscious of this whole business of where they came from, the significance of black people, which leads me to say that we had, Ralph, many black people here who were outstanding in what they were able to do. There was a black man, a sea captain called Captain Tom Dias from a place called Rock Hole. The exploits of this man were such that the British Admiralty honored him, gave him an award because he was commissioned to deliver the yacht for Prince Philip's uncle, Lord Mountbatten. And he sailed that yacht across the Atlantic. There was no GPS, no radar, no modern communications, just with a sextant and an astrolabe up the Thames River. And they were so impressed. He was probably one of the first black people from the Caribbean to have tea at Buckingham Palace, Captain Tom Dias.
Yes, yes.
But we don't read about that in schools. We don't read about him. And so that's why, in a way, our system has dumbed us down, because he should be a prominent person. There's no plaque of his achievement. There's no statue of him. And when Prince Philip came here first, on his first visit here, probably in the early 1950s, one of the first persons he asked for was Captain Tom Dias, because Prince Philip knew him. He had met him at Buckingham Palace when he came to deliver the yacht to his uncle, Earl Mountbatten. And so there we go. And there are others like him.
And I'm sure there are many, many more stories that you could probably spend a couple of hours talking to us about. But like I said, I would love to applaud the government, and the minister, and for those in the society and the community. And I saw Miss Lucille Seymour and Mr. McFeel and yourself doing a promo, and those people around us who embrace it and want to just share the information. It's not combative, or we're not trying to divide anything. I'm a media owner, and my role is to share the truth and the facts. I'm not sensationalizing what happened in the past, and we should not. But of course, there are those of us who know the information, and we should take some time to listen to them and learn. And that's where I see our future going. And I applaud, like I said, applaud those involved who put so much effort into it. And I know there are going to be some pushback.
Of course there are. Of course
But what they're doing, I will say for myself that it's the right thing. And we need to embrace our history. And I hope that the events for the next couple of days are well represented and supported. Any final words, Mr. Roy?
Yeah, I too, would like to offer my congratulations and my support to the government. This is a good first step. It is a good first step. And I hope that it will get the support that it deserves. And to those people who are reticent or who are objecting for whatever reason, I say there is nothing to be fearful about it, because one of the things about Cayman is that we have to understand that it's such a small society, and we're so vulnerable that we cannot afford to be isolated and divisive, that we have to work together. And I suppose a lot of people don't understand me because they believe that I'm against white. I'm not against white at all. What I am against is colonialism. So if someone is a colonial, well, I'm not their friend. But many of my good friends are white. All of my colleagues, people who I work with as a professional educator, are all white people. It's just that I want to see history represented as factual as it is, and not rewritten by revisionists whose agenda is to hide the truth.
Thank you, my friend. And I hope to talk with you again sometime in the future. Have a great evening.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed our show today and invite you to join us next Sunday at 2 p.m. for more Cayman Conversations. Remember to like, share, follow, and subscribe to our Facebook and YouTube pages, and also pick up copies of Caymanian Times newspaper on Wednesdays and Fridays at locations across the islands. Cayman Conversations is a production of the Caymanian Times newspaper. Have a great evening and a fabulous week.